The issues concerning the majoritarianism, particularly in politics, there are issues about the government formation in which a party which gets the majority gets the right to make policies and govern the state. But in larger political terms, it is believed that a group or a class of individuals who could be in majority due to language, due to race, due to religion, due to beliefs, they might superimpose their authority over others who do not have that kind of majority. And that belief leads to time and again creating an impression that minority is always suffering at the hands of the majority. Now, if we see the history of the world and particularly history of India, we find that a large number of uh, you can say the rulers, particularly starting from the medieval era, a minuscule minority ruled over a huge mass of individuals. People came from, say, Uzbekistan or other places, and few hundred, few thousand individuals attacked and ruled over small pockets, and then they expanded their empire. And then the British came, few hundred British, then you can say the largest number, it is believed that the British population in India never crossed 1 lakh or 2 lakh, but they ruled over crores of individuals. So if we consider that idea, and the majority, the Hindu community, the crores of Hindus never had the authority to impose their preferences, their sensibilities over a small minority which was ruling over them. So similarly, post-independence also, there is time and again we see about that the Hindu majority is imposing their belief system, their political ideology, their preferences, their food habits, this and that and whatnot. We keep on hearing on the small, the so-called what we call the peaceful minority. So these issues have been going on. This propaganda has been going on, and there are issues which are connected to social theories which have been formed time and again by sociologists, by political thinkers. And Professor Gangopadhyay has dealt with all these issues in detail in his book. And we are very lucky, we are very obliged to him to having accepted our invitation and come and talk about his book. So I request Professor Kaushik Gangopadhyay ji to kindly talk about his book. So over to you, sir, Professor Gangopadhyay.
Thank you, Kuldeep ji. And namaste to all of you. It is so kind of you to give me the floor and also the very nice introduction to my book. So basically, Thomas Sowell is a very famous American thinker. He has a very famous quote. He said that in a democracy, the problem, uneducated and ignorant, their ignorance is always something you have to suffer with. But what is now happening is the ignorant of the college educated. One of that ignorance is this majoritarianism. This is taught as a theory in the media community. So this is one book I wrote against, but this is the theory that is taught in every college. So this is the theory that is taught every liberal arts curriculum everywhere, humanities, even after so many years of so many governments. So the point I'm trying to say that's a theory that requires counter. Then okay. So basically, I'll talk about, I'll go very quickly. But so basically the myth, the word myth, it is not to belittle anything. It is a scientific word. It has been used by one famous thinker. His name is Sohail Inayatullah. Sohail Inayatullah is called the father of futurology. So there's a discipline that looked into how the future is shaped from today. So there basically there is something on the superficial side. Like suppose that someone here is hit by a bus. That's very superficial, called litany. What is the rule? Why is it happening? You might say congestion. The person was not going easily. So that is sort of called systemic causes. When there are more worldviews, why people have to travel so much? Why in this present world the role of community is less, the role of monetary incentive is more? That sort of worldview. And even in the most deepest thing is something called myth. that actually is a mark of a civilization. So that holds thing. So one of the myths present Western civilization holds is this majoritarian myth. The majority oppresses the minority. Uh, yeah, so I'll just pass it over. So here is some statistics. So there are 2 persons killed. One is Hafiz Junaid in Haryana in a train, and the judge said that the initial dispute was about seat sharing and all. But of course, BBC said Muslims, not plural, not singular, plural. Muslims assaulted because they ate beef. Because once you have this myth, majoritarianism, any Muslim dying with a conflict of Hindu has to happen because of the majority oppressing the minority, right? And the beef will sort of come. Um, of course, but there's another person killed, Umesh Kole. I think this is in Pune or some Maharashtrian town. Uh, so basically, maybe I don't remember exactly the town, but basically, this person was killed by 5 people, and his nothing was stolen. His mobile was not stolen, his money was not stolen, and he was tracked down to his WhatsApp or some messages he did in support of Nupur Sarmaji. And that is what it is sort of. So it is a very marked thing. But if you look at the basically coverage, the Umesh Kole coverage, there is no mark of religious thing. It is like a law and order issue and that is thing. Similarly, I've taken another thing. Now this time with statistics. Akhlaq of Dadri 2015. Well, he was killed definitely for taking beef. That's fine. I mean, not fine. I mean, that's reprehensible. But how was it covered? It fetches 1915 results in the global media. On the same time, around 6 months' time, one person, Prasant Pujari, was killed in Karnataka again for his activism. Now, what Akhlaq did might be illegal because the laboratory said that he actually had this beef, which is sort of cannot really slaughter a cow there, right? But but Prasant Pujari this was perfectly legal. But if you see, this is like sort of like law and order issue, and only 141 results. So it is not. So you can see people that really believe in vegetarianism. So coverage is much less. I go for big incidents, right? So Kashmiri Pandits getting out of Kashmir Valley, only 1,008 reports. Post Godhra riots, 16 times more, around 30,000 reports, right? But if you look at the casualty, I mean, 1,500 or so Kashmiri Pandits died, and 1,20,000 people left Valley. In case of Gujarat, it is much more even, with official figures 790 Muslims died and 250. It could be more imbalanced, maybe unofficially, let's say 3 times more. Still, it is not much more than Kashmiri Pandits. And actually, I don't know of even one Gujarati Muslim who get out of Gujarat because of this riot. So there's one person who went to Calcutta and he soon came back again. Right. So I'm saying the scale wise, Kashmiri Pandits was much higher, I think, arguably, but you see the coverage is 16 times less. That's what it is. Because of the idea of majoritarianism. Similarly, Sikh riots and all. Huh? Now, I did much more systematic study. I took 3 years of data. And every time the media says this term, majoritarian or majoritarianism, I looked into that report. I had an RA, fortunately. Fortunately, I have some other skills, and so I could earn money so that to have that RA. And then that RA was doing it. So we went through around 8,800 incidents. We see each place wherever majoritarian or is mentioned, which majority are they talking about? And this is very serious diagram. Why is it serious? Because Salvador Babones, the sociologist who made headlines a few years ago, India Today, he tweeted it, I think about 2 weeks ago or so. I mean, apart from that, it's serious, but we are always an approval or something. So I'm quoting it. Yeah. So now, where you can see the Hindus of India, 90% of the time in the global media. This is not Indian media. This is the global media. This is the database is called Global News Stream. It's a very prestigious thing. Everybody uses it for media research. They are 80% of the time. Hindus are for like, I don't know, 14-15% of the population. But I mean, I'm not saying that everything Hindus are doing are good and everything like that. but probably we are not responsible for 80% of the world's misery. That's probably, I mean, I would use an explicit, uh, I will say bullshit. So that's what it is. Of course, there is Hindi speakers of India, and in USA, this Hindu and Hindi, these terms are very confusing for people. They feel Hindus speak Hindi and non-Hindus speak non-Hindi. So from that perspective, it could add it there. Also, there are Hindus and Buddhists of South Asia, another 0.7%. So basically, more than 80% is Hindus, 7.8% and more are Buddhists. So everything is pretty much Hindu and Buddhist problem in the world. Other people are sort of doing good things on it. That's what it comes up. Right? Right. Now, this part I don't even need to talk in this room. But some other place I went to, I am Ahmedabad like 2 weeks ago. There I spoke about it and people sort of listen very intently. So basically, if you look at Indian constitution, it is biased against the majority in a way. Article 28 and 30, they don't let Hindus run their education institutions, but they do to minorities. And secondly, Article 25, it says propagation of religion as a basic thing. It was not liked by our Constituent Assembly members. They said, well, you can observe your, but propagation is sort of aligned to Indian culture. But it was sort of kept alive by my fellow Bengali Christian, Harendra Mukherjee. He was sort of chairperson of a minority rights commission. I don't remember the exact name, but something to do with minority in that Constituent Assembly. And on his behest, it was inserted. But even in Europe, these kind of things are resented. For example, East Europe, the Orthodox churches, they resent the Protestant conversion. In the Greek constitution, they allow everyone to profess their own faith, but not to propagate their faith. So again, it is biased against Hindus. The moment Hindus, they don't proselyte. But the moment you try to proselyte, Hindus will respond. That's how the real world it works. And whenever you will respond, they will call Hindus are aggressive. They are changing. We have to save Hinduism from Hindutva. That all these things, these are academic, these are not my words, they're academic journal words. And this is why coming because we have inserted Article 25. Right? Right. So judiciary, they also believe in it a lot. I'll not go into detail. Okay, our Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, now we Hindus, we don't like to say bad things about these people, but he actually said that Muslims have the first right to the resources. So he actually acknowledged the majoritarian myth, subscribing to the majoritarian myth. Ramchandra Go, he said, 2015 or so, that naming a road after Shivaji, this is an act of majoritarianism. Because Shivaji apparently is a very regional small figure. That sort of a thing, not as at par with Aurangzeb and Akbar. Yeah. So it's a paradox. In spite of everything being biased against Hindus, why is it everything is blamed on Hindus? I'll resolve the paradox in my section 4. So second part, or second, so I have 5 sections. The second section is about history. So this is the idea of the tyranny of the majority. So if you go back long time ago, it is there in Plato's book, but it's a very different way. It says, suppose you are flying, and there's a problem in the aeroplane. Whose opinion would you take? Of the passengers or those who know aviation, the pilots? Or I think everybody will say it's of course the pilot. What do you know about it? Then actually, basically, the majority is stupid. Because majority do not have the domain expertise. Only a handful of the minority in any profession has the domain expertise. Right? If you go to law, very few human beings we know law, right? Very few human beings know about medicine. Very few human beings know about economics. So whatever you go, very few. So if you look, everybody comes in. That's the problem, right? So that sense it was introduced, this term. So and then things changed. When this Alexis de Tocqueville, French diplomat, he's touring the America, and he said that, well, in America this is too much of a majority. Why? The idea is basically everywhere at that time there's 2 houses in the parliament, the lower house by the people and the upper house by the elite, who has the domain knowledge about administration. America, both houses by the people. So he called it that way. Then John Stuart Mill actually talked about it, but he basically said that you have to empower the smallest minority. And what is the smallest minority? The individual. So he essentially told that people that time he wrote in his that you have to be individual rights very sacrosanct, and this is not what our social justice warriors would like today. They don't like individual rights. Then comes Antonio Gramsci. This is the cultural Marxism, the phenomenon that is sort of took over USA. Thankfully, I don't know how long the new dawn will last, but that's what it is. In India, this is what the education sector is guided by, and they made this term very sacrosanct. I don't want to go into too much detail in this because main point I want to cover. If the question comes, I'll be happy to sort of address it over. In India, of course, the idea started from constitution, this minority subcommittee and other things. Then our Nehruji, he has some letters. He said that basically, he said essentially that except the Jews, Hindus are the sort of the worst people of the world. And he wrote it. So note to Home Minister. And that basically in a way that talks about the idea of majoritarianism. That's what it is. Right. Now, all this demands two assumptions. One is all cultures are sort of similar, same. And second is there's a conflict. So in Karl Marx, you have this class conflict, class struggle. What is class struggle? There's a bourgeoisie, there's a proletariat, and these classes are sort of fighting, right? That's what society is. It's a very, very big assumption. I mean, there's a lot of the times classes are cooperating and all, right? And Donald Trump is a bourgeoisie class, his voters are proletariat, right? All these kind of things are. But anyway, let's leave it at that. So I don't go into that, but I relate the other assumptions that all cultures are sort of equal. So there's a very famous example in the if you go to this our Latin America. So when there are two nations or two peoples and they're fighting, so we say, well, there's a history here and there, action, reaction, chain, cycle. How do you know who is the to blame? But in some cases, we know whom to blame. So the Europeans who landed in the South America, even though they landed there, the Red Indians were very kind to them. They did nothing to them. And the Europeans did everything bad, everything unimaginable to torture those people. So in this case, we definitely know, right, who it is, right? In Indian case, they say, well, British were so bad because Shahjahan did that. So there is some excuse here and there, but there is no excuse at all. So some cultures are definitely more intolerant than others. And how do you sort of do it? So I here formulate a criteria. So this is a criteria given by sociological term. It is also mentioned by Yuval Noah Harari in his book Sapiens, chapter 12. No, not chapter 12. I think chapter 6 or 7. So it's called linear theory of social evolution. What is linear theory? If you ask a Christian, an evangelical Christian, I mean, I have nothing against basically Christianity. I have many good friends are Christian. If they get peace or power in their individual life from Christianity, I have all my best wishes for them. But if you are sort of looking at a community level, what do they sort of want to see? They want to see that it started with Jesus and this is sort of going up, going up, going up. So they see we'll go this way and eventually the entire world will be Christian. And that is how it will ensure the peace and prosperity. That is what they think, right? With the good intentions and all. But the good intentions, that's what it is. But that's what this is the belief is. So this LTS is a linear plan, right? It will go linearly. It will not go down. It will always increase, right? Secondly, it's not a very academic plan in the sense if you are not a Christian or if you don't believe in this plan, you will be otherized. So they will call them heathen. The laws, if you look at the European, the law not a very new thing. So company law was there in 1620, 17th century. If you look at the Europeans, they are very legal in their own affairs, but they are going to Red Indians, they're taking the land away. They're coming to India, they're taking the land away. Why? Because this land doesn't belong to the adherents of the God, adherents to the Christian God. This is the heathen. So that's why it can be taken away. And this is not my interpretation. This is the interpretation of US court in one of the judgments in 1869. So all things are there, right? So the point I'm trying to say that the idea that others has to be, so even in fact, Hitler's Holocaust is a very sad episode. And people said that Hitler did what Hitler did. It is a sort of a small replication what was done to the Americas, to Native Americans, inspired by Christianity. That's what David Stannard and other American academicians have written. Right. So these two criteria, they match with academic theories and all. And the point is, once this theory is given, you can't change it. The data can't change it. The theory is given, it is given. So I give an example. If you go to Mahatma Gandhiji, Gandhiji was viewed as the ideal Christian in Europe. When he went to Italy, people came to him say, well, we are seeing the second prophet after Christ. Tell me, what lottery will win this number? I'll get the number from you. It will be true. And so, but Gandhiji, he was not a Christian. In fact, he actually said that everybody should stick to own religion and all. And that's how people should be great, right? So if you are a Christian, the data says that you can have Christian values from a non-Christian. Then proselytization or evangelism is not meaningless. But will they change their anything from that chart? No. The evangelism will go on because the theory can't change based on data. That's what it is, right? And then I have done basically looked into these, and these are the prominent LTS's. Political Christianity, I would say, almost dead in Europe. If you look at England, or if you go to, for example, 100 years ago, Jallianwala Bagh massacre, right? This Dyer killed 1,500 people without giving any warning. And what the English ladies were discussing, well, Dyer is the last hope for us in Punjab to uphold Christian values. If we kick Dyer out, Christian values will be out. So we must support Dyer. We must raise money for Dyer. That's what they're discussing because they believed in political Christianity. It's not that they love dead, people getting killed or something, but they believe this theory is very sacrosanct, and that's why this has to be upheld at any cost. Right? That's what it is. Now, from if you look at from the point of view, we have this LTSs have sort of identified political Christianity is dead in Europe, maybe some other parts, maybe, but not so much. Political Islam. You see this communism. Marx was sort of anti-Christianity all the time. So he did not like this Christian idea, but he brought his secular linear theory. No, we have there's a one person who is egalitarian. Marx gave the scientific doctrine of equality. It will go on, go on, go on, and eventually the entire globe will be sort of communist. Right? When I was young, apart from being a Bengali, I had a grandfather who was a full-time communist. The stories I used to hear, well, now it's only 1/3 of the population is Marxist, communist, but it will be soon by 2000, by 2000, it will be entire globe. That sort of stories, right? Because we believe in the same idea of the linear theory. If you see the Indian constitution, we don't like the religious struggle problem, so I will impose secularism. But we could have seen it as a linear theory problem, right? We could have banned linear theory, and that would have been much more prudent, I would think. Anyway, better be sort of late be never, I would sort of go. And then there are Nazism, racism, and all. Nationalism is not necessarily LTSC because, so America, for example, I don't like American nationalism. In a way, it is anti-India, right? I mean, when we are fighting in Bangladesh, Russia, the Americans, they send these things. But you can't call them a linear thing. They change with time and all, right? Initially, it was a nation of white Christians. Then it became also the women, or they got the suffrage. Then blacks are also getting it. So it is changing. The nation is changing, and they're also changing priorities and all. And Hinduism, Hindutva, when in this, maybe in this room, I don't need too much, but I'll talk a little bit. Now, point is it my only classification? No, actually not. Yuval Noah Harari, he called Nazism, communism, liberalism as religion. It is in book Sapiens, it is there, chapter 12. There is another person, Tom Holland, very famous Christian scholar, and he said actually Hinduism is not any religion like Christianity, it is a very different thing. And this is also told by many seminaries where they train evangelists for coming to India. They also tell that you don't know Hinduism because it is sort of a different thing. So in some countries we go talk about Christ, they rejected Christ and attacked us. Some countries we went there and they accepted Christ. India is a very peculiar case. They accepted Christ, but they didn't have to our religion. So it's a very different sort of phenomenon. They can't reconcile it, right? Right. So I have quotes and all from all these things, but I'll just make it short. Only a question comes, I'll talk about it. So basically, if you look at, there's another Jewish thinker who was very prominent on this, conservative conference. I mean, in Washington in 2024, it happened. He was the chair for that, Yoram Hazony. Yoram Hazony has a prize-winning book, The Virtue of Nationalism. There he mentioned these 5 imperialisms. They actually match So it's a very different way he figured them out. He figured them out from history. I figured out from the dogmas, but the answers are matching in a way because he also identified these five as imperialisms. And liberalism is one of the imperialisms, which is also in my linear theory that everybody has to be exactly equal over time. That is a cultural Marxist sort of idea, right? Um, Now, Hinduism is not really any theory. Again, many people said that. Nehruji said that Hinduism is a vague, amorphous thing. You can't make anything out of it. There's a famous person, S.L. Balgangadhar. He was president of the American Academy of Religion. He has a famous book, Hidden in His Blindness. In his book, he also talked about it. In my book, I've given annexed a summary of his arguments. If you look at Hindutva, it is sort of a little nuance, but let me talk about a little bit on it. So Hindutva was Hinduism. The word was coined by the Christian missionaries. They saw something in India. They wanted to describe it in their way. So they say, well, it's a religion. It's not a perfect religion like ours. It's a religion, all right. So they make the religion quite similar to Christianity. Now, Bengali Hindus of that Renaissance era, not of the present era, they actually did not like it because they wanted to start a new discourse on Indian civilizational discourse on the modern age problems. So they coined the term Hindutva. So first it was Chandranath Basu who has a book, but before that also term was there. Then Rabindranath Tagore, he has a book, he has an essay, he wrote about Hindutva. He said basically, this is the perspective that you have to be selfless. So it is a very, you don't want to be anthropocentric world. You want to make it a more harmonious, balanced world. That's what he is talking about Hindutva. Savarkarji then basically, he never said that laws be different. He said the laws has to be exactly equal for us. That is what, not exactly otherization. That is sort of equal. Well, BJP and RSS, what I have, many things I have said, but I'll just give you this summary. Look at the number of riots before Modi, number after Modi. Number of riots has come down. So often, this Christopher Jeffrey Lott and other people, they say it's similar to Nazi phenomenon. So the moment Nazi came to power, Hitler came to power, within months, prominent people left Germany, prominent scientists. There's a Haber who started ammonia, he got the Nobel Prize, Einstein. So this entire intellectual is out. On the contrary, I mean, so many people said that they'll be out after Modi, but nobody have known that they're out of India. Yeah, right? Now, I think I'll skip it. We'll talk about Karl Popper. So these are the books written in favor of majoritarianism. If I their footsteps, the book would have ended now. They have given their opinion, majoritarianism is a bad thing. I have given my opinion that it is not very bad thing because there is a cultural asymmetry. The linear theory, cultures with linear theory, they are imperialistic, and somehow you want to sort of catch them. You don't want to give them the pass of minority. But I will go one step forward. I will examine scientifically their hypothesis is mine, which stands with the data. Right? Anyone can have a theory. The idea of majoritarianism is basically it is good intent, but good intent does not make science. So if you look at germ theory, how did germ theory came? This happened in the 19th century. There's a hospital called Vienna General Hospital. This is the best hospital in the Habsburg Empire and perhaps best hospital in Europe as well. So that time, many childbirths used to result in death of the mother. What was the argument? Well, the air is bad, the mother has a problem. So problem is attributed to everything but the doctors. How can you blame doctors? They have taken Hippocratic oath. They are doing best for the people. Intention-wise, yes. Another doctor who talked about it, Ignaz Somnitz, he is a Czech guy. He says, look at the data. The data says whenever the childbirth is happening in absence of doctor, but midwife, even by herself, the death rates are much lower. So it has to have something with the doctors. And even it's whatever intention or not. And they figured it out. Basically, doctors are doing some surgical procedure and they are coming to give birth and they are carrying the germ. And that germ is infected the mother. And that's how it is happening. And this is the beginning of the germ theory. So my humble point is intention cannot make something good. For scientificity, it has to be based on data, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. So in the majoritarian hypothesis, it says majority is guilty. In my hypothesis, it says the linear theory is guilty. Let's see which hypothesis stands true in few of the data. So I look at these genocides. Genocides are extreme events of intolerance. Right? There are 10 genocides. I mean, there are many genocides. There's a society that studies genocide. I spent quite some time studying them. I was helped by someone from that society. So basically, I look. So if I take some genocide, they will say, "Well, why have you chosen this genocide?" So I take the 10 genocides. New York Times likes. New York Times says these are the genocides, right? And New York Times is not Hindu's friend, so I took their statistics. Let's see them, and I figured it out that almost none of these genocides, the involvement of the majority is there. So if you look at, for example, Rwandan genocide in 1994, or what a Rwanda movie is there, right? So basically, that genocide, maybe maximum people participated, around 11% of the population. If you look at any other genocide, Cambodian genocide, Pol Pot did it. What percentage of people were complicit? Not even 2-3%. If you look at the Bangladesh genocide, I hate these Pakistani troops who committed this Bengali massacre, right? But how many of them were involved? It is not even 2% of the Pakistani population. Most Pakistanis, they were told Hindus are bad people, they are creating trouble. But those Pakistanis say, go and kill the Hindus. They have not said it probably. That's what my hunch is. So, and if you look at any population, even the Nazi genocide, Holocaust, right? I think same story. Most Germans were not aware. But if you look at, is there a linear theory? And everywhere there is a linear theory. In the Rwandan case, there's a Hutu and Tutsi, there's a linear theory that these Hutus will take over and Tutsis will go down. In Cambodian genocide, there's a Marxist linear theory of we have to go to the next phase of the revolution. In the Bangladesh genocide, there's a linear theory that here Muslims or Islamism will sort of conquer the world, and this is the frontier is now this Pakistan. That's sort of a linear theory everywhere. Okay, fine, no problem. Now let's go to the uh, small intolerance that may not result in genocide, but other problems. And that is what comes in the media most of the time. So, firstly, we have to understand one thing. The person who is saying, I am a victim, need not be victim. Why? This has been studied in psychology. It is called dark triads, Machiavellism, narcissism, and psychotherapy. These are, sorry, psychopathy. Thank you. So all these things, they sort of prompt people to pretend to be a victim so that you can conquer. It has a name, it's called microaggression. I give an example. 2013, prestigious American college, Oberlin College, in Pennsylvania. There, some people with Ku Klux Klan uniforms appeared. And liberals are saying, see how the campus have become. Right? Very puzzling. Because Ku Klux Klan sort of died before World War II. I mean, how can suddenly appear? It was found out it's a liberal student, one or two, who are donning these uniforms and going around so that they could pretend victim and then make opinions tilted to them more and more. This is a common tactics, right? If you go to Second World War, we know that now every history book will say, right, Hitler attacked Poland, 1st September, right, 1939. That time BBC reported Polish people attacked Germany, right, because Hitler sort of put some people in a police uniform and pretended that way. That is a very standard sort of thing, right? Now, if you see that, then how would you know who is a victim, who is a thing? Here I will use a framework. I've used the framework of Ronald Coase other time. I did not mention it. In the detail, I can discuss about it. This is by Friedrich Hayek. Hayek has a thing called tacit knowledge. He says that people know something, they don't speak it out, but they use it for their thing. Now, if there is a victim and victor, right? Suppose I am hitting Kuldeepji here. He may not be able to do anything. So what did you do? You will move away from me. That's how people react. So outside you, you can't see below what is happening. For you, you have no distinction. I can say, oh, I'm being hit, and you will believe me. But only between us we know, right? Who is a victim, who is an aggressor. And he will move away. I will not move away. I'll stay here. So essentially, those with victim, they will sort of they will get out of the place. And this is very clear, easy to see. If you look at East Germany, West Germany, right? Now you might say, well, so who built the Berlin Wall? Initially, there's no wall. People used to leave I mean, East Germans, they used to go to West Germany and then come back. But then East Germany, they realized that people are leaving, and that is bad for their peddling of the socialist dream. So you have to stop it. How would you stop it? By building a wall, and they would kill anyone who's trying to go other side. We'll say that, we might say that, well, Cuba is a bad place if you believe the American. If you believe the Cuban government, of course, Cuba is a great place. But who are living? Are there people who are leaving America and going to Cuba? Actually, it's other way around. 10 lakh Cubans left Cuba and they are settled in Florida and other places, right? So if you see everywhere, people vote by their feet, not by their mouth necessarily, right? So that's what it is. So let me look at the population percentage, how it happens. So there are 4 stage scenarios, and this is the most important thing of my book. So basically, the majority could have LTSE, the minority could also have LTSE. Examples could be like Sri Lanka and Myanmar. So the majority, this Sinhalese, they took the Western nationalism little bit too seriously. One nation has to be, one language has to be enforced, and all this sort of thing. The minority, that Tamils, I mean, this not Tamils generally, but this LTT, they are not also innocent either. They have done their massacres, their share of massacres and all. So both have majorities. So who will win? Nobody knows. Majoritarian will say majority will win all the time. So minority population will decrease. My hypothesis will say, well, anyone can decrease depending on the strength of their power of the linearity. So no, nothing can be concluded. In the second case, nobody has an LTSE. So look at Brazil, right? In America, you have blacks and whites. Brazil, you have color-wise blacks and whites, but people don't call them blacks and whites. They call Brazilians, all of them, right? And there is no data and all, and there is no, of course, accusation. So here also nothing can be said. Third case, majority with LTSE, minority without LTSE. Here, both hypotheses will say diminished minority population. And indeed, we can see diminished minority population in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. If you see over the years, minority population is falling. What is the reason? Reason I could point out to this Islamism and all. The fourth case, this is the most interesting case. Majority without LTSE and minority with LTSE. The majoritarian will say the majority population should go up and minority population should go down. My hypothesis would say other way. The majority population will actually go down, and indeed it is happening in India. Because 88% Hindus were there in 1947, and 2011 it is 78% officially. Could be much less now. Much less, of course, if you don't include the liberals as Hindus. And is India the unique case? Not really. Lebanon and Tibet, same phenomenon, right? This Lebanese church, Orthodox church, it is a sort of almost Hinduism sort of national culture level. And the Arabs are very aggressive, socialist, Islamists. And of course, now it was a Christian country, only Christian country in the Middle East. Now has become so it was like 70% Christian. Now after the civil war, it is only 30% Christian. Right? Nassim Nicholas Taleb, he was a Lebanese Christian, got out. Of course, Gad Saad was Lebanese Jew, who also got out. Tibet's the same story, right? So basically, actually, Nassim Nicholas Taleb has a very interesting book, Skin in the Game. Here he says actually that the most intolerant wins. Basically, he says the minorities' intolerance is a big problem, and he gave his examples. Here is another thing. Popular Front of India, Islamist outfit, their booklets. The booklet says categorically that Muslims need not be majority to conquer India. They have to be more and more intolerant. They have to believe in their political theories more and more, right? That's what it is being said. So, of course, these people are serious people, right? They're conquering it. So they know what works. It's not the population percentage exactly. It's also the intolerance that works.
So sorry.
So then if you go to this, I have talked about the paradox, Majoritarian Hindu paradox. Why is it happening? So if you believe my prescription, my thing, then you understand it. Because liberals have a linear theory. And who would they attack? The people with no linear theory. Hindus, Buddhists, and people with this indigenous, right? Those people they will attack. That's what it is. And so there are some other arguments these people have talked about. These people like Asutosh Barsne and all. Economic outcome. Maybe I'll discuss a little bit because this is what you encounter everyday life. So in the national survey, so basically they say that this is this quote. is taken from this book, uh, Tanbir Fazl. So basically, it says that if you look at the Muslims, they are not getting good jobs because they are minority, they are discriminated, right? And that sort of a thing. No, firstly, job does not come, it doesn't fall from the sky, right? It requires education, skill development, and all these sort of things. Now, Muslims, they are themselves saying that they have a higher fertility rate. So that means even with the same income, they have to give more income for living other things, leaving less income for education and all. So clearly, there is a reason why it is being happening. Secondly, if it is a minority, what about the other minorities? Let's look at Sikhs and Christians. They are minorities, and you can see they are doing much better than Hindus. So they basically don't quote the inconvenient figure; they just put some figure, and they call it is a support of their theory, which is completely wrong. Now let's look at another straw man argument: structural violence. What is structural violence? So basically, if you look at India's prison, Muslims are like 19% of the prison population. Actual population in the census is 14%. They say, well, the judges are biased and all, process is biased, so they say they are. Okay, I take it. Now let's go to UK. In the UK, United Kingdom, both Hindus and Muslims, they are minorities. And it's not that UK people, they have great love for the Hindus. In fact, Churchill said worse things about Hindus. He said Indians are a beastly people with a beastly religion. He said that. And of course, say such things said by Macaulay and all. So there is no continuity of thoughts against Hindus. Now, if you look at the crimes, the Muslim migrants are 4.2% of the population, but 18% in the prison population. And Hindus are like 1.3% in population, but it's beyond less than 1.1% in the prison population. So you can see that. So definitely there is a cultural difference. This is exactly what Theodore Dalrymple, a British person, he wrote. He basically wrote that. Essentially, cultures are very different. He writes on it. Lots of books are there. I think I'll talk about Asutosh Basner. If things come, I'll talk about him. Similarly, I'll just do very quick. Let's say this. Suppose whatever I'm saying is wrong. Many people might be upset, not you, but in a liberal campus. I inaugurated my book among the liberal students only, because my college is full of them. So I told them, they asked me, then why are you saying so? So I say, okay, let's take liberals very seriously. India polarization or something happens, they say Hindutva is responsible. Okay. I take it very seriously. If it is Hindutva is responsible, without Hindutva, there must be no polarization. Now let's go to America. Where is Hindutva in America? Why it is getting so polarized? Well, they'll continue their argument. Christians are right-wingers are becoming very sort of rabid or something. I sort of refuse to do that because I know my Christian friends. They are sort of living Christianity out. There's a new Christian bishop who actually said that let's replace cross by Muslim symbol. That sort of thing is going on in US. But let's take still their argument. I mean, I don't buy it, but let's take for the second time I buy their argument. Now let's go to Netherlands. This is an atheist country. 55% people are decidedly atheist. 25% or so are sort of believes in some kind of a spiritualism, not exactly any organized religion. Why is it getting so polarized? Heath Wilders, he was a margin guy. He got the most amount of seats in the parliament, but he was a more of a marginal player. Right? It is definitely a very polarized country. Yeah, and of course you know, right, how much trouble he had to pull up the government because nobody's wanted to be untouchable by going with him. So that sort of a thing it is, right? So liberal thing is decidedly wrong. Even if you take their value in face value, it cannot explain everything. But if you look at India, America, Netherlands, one thing is common: the liberal education. That's what it is common. And there's Occam's razor, right? You look at the simplest explanation. That is the liberal education. You look at some American papers. These are by 3 Ivy League professors, and they have found that 1970s is sort of the time when this liberal thinking came into America. From 1978 to now, 40 years, intolerance for other opinions sort of increased rapidly. Okay, you said it's a long term, so many things are happening. How do you know it is really liberal thing? Okay, I agree with you. Let's look at short run, 4 years. 2019 and 23, when the liberal dogmas are in the top, they have captured the state power. And these 4 years again, there is another survey that says that that the tolerance for others, it was 80%, now it is 58%. 4 years is a sharp decline in tolerance. So you see, short run, long run, both way, it is coming that it's only liberalism that is creating all the trouble in the world. Last part is sort of, if you really believe me, so what is the prescription for social harmony? So the idea is sattva and ahimsa. Essentially, the social sciences we have today, they have a lot of issues, they have a lot of problems, lot of ignorances. So one major, I just highlight one to just highlight this point. I don't want to make a big critique because it requires at least one book itself, but I'll just one section highlight it. One of the human emotion is envy. In Hindi, in Sanskrit, matsarya, right? So it is not acknowledged at all in the current day psychology literature. Why? Because it happens among the equals. I would not envy Narendra Modi. I would not envy my student, but I'll be more envious of my colleagues only, right? That's how it happens. Now, this is why. So basically, if you look at the 7 fundamental cardinal sins of Christianity, probably comes from pre-Christian times. One of them is basically envy. If you look at the 6 inner enemies, ripus in Indian culture, right? Matsarji is one of them. If you look at the very, very famous novelists of all kinds, they all acknowledge this many, many times. Many of the crimes happens because of envy. But the psychology says there is nothing called envy. They sort of put it under the carpet. Because then the idea of equality as the best thing in the world will demolish. That is what it is. So there is an entire book by a very German scholar, Helmut Such. You can read it book. He started also a society for unequal outcomes or something like that. So anyway, so let's leave it at that. Now, what LTCs do? So basically, this because of this social science, what happens? This LTSs make this social science make the theory is very sacrosanct. What actually happens is not important. The goal of equality is very important. What is actually happening on the ground is not important, right? Now, what happens? And these LTSs that take care of it. So what happens? You see, if you look at human beings, we are all very tiny things, right? I mean, if you look from the moon, our entire planet is only this much. Even from the moon, the closest celestial body. So we are nothing in the matter of space and time. We don't like to feel so low. We like to feel we have a divine purpose. The moment you join liberalism, you get a divine purpose. Anywhere something is happening, anywhere one woman is getting elected, anywhere, that's an accomplishment for all the liberals, irrespective of the actual person, irrespective of whether it's Kamala Harris or Tulsi Gabbard, it's an accomplishment, right? Because this is how it happens. And because you do that, you don't need to do anything for the cause. You don't need to do anything. You just believe in something and you feel a very, very big purpose. And this is why it is so popular. Now, but this is very terrible for social harmony. What happens? You gain very quickly traction, but you fall out the moment you win. So I'll give an example. Europe was a Christendom, right? And they wanted to Christianize the entire world. And they did their share in North and South Africa and other places, right? North and South America and other places, right? Now, what happened? The moment the entire Europe became Christian, nothing to conquer, they fell out because then they don't believe in that theory. They started a new theory. It is called nationalism. Started from the Westphalian times, Westphalian treaties, mid 17th century. And then nations has to be sacrosanct, right? Nations have to grow. The English will conquer the entire globe. They actually did. The others tried, like the French and the Germans. They could not. But the idea was conquer the entire globe, right? Again, this is becoming a very big problem. And then same thing happened in the Marxism, Nazism, new theories. And when all these theories came shattered, Second World War, they started the new theory, liberalism, all equal has to be that. But these theories, they don't give any good social harmony. Social harmony cannot be done by a theory. It can be done only by a collective experience. And this is why it is very unpopular. Intellectuals, they like to say that I am saying something big. But this empirics thing says no, intellectuals can't say something big. It is the entire community that has to speak out. The kind of much maligned Khap Panchayat model. Because everybody coming together talks about it, whether you like it or not, but that actually is much more robust than any theory kind of way of looking for peace and sustainable solutions. And these are not my words, there are two, three books I have mentioned. One is S.N. Balgangadhar's, another is Thomas Sowell, A Conflict of Vision. He talked about two cultures. One is called constraint, one is called unconstrained. His constraint culture is sort of matches this right side. So I'll sort of, and what is the Indian civilization's point of view? And there basically you have this idea of Satya and Ahimsa. This is there in the Mahabharata. This is there in the Buddha. Buddha called it Pragya and Karuna, but same sort of thing. Then it's there in the Gandhiji. When Gandhiji says Satya and Ahimsa, it's not a new thing. He's only referring to our age-old things. In the Mahabharata, the nuances of Satya Ahimsa is there. In the Karnavad Adhyaya, there is a debate with Yudhishthir, Krishna, Arjuna, all concerning what is made, all these things. So, and then I've shown that these are not actually palpable with the DEI values. Nowadays, I sort of sometimes started that one day maybe we'll say that we would be the adherents of DEI, but they actually goes in contrast with Satya and Ahimsa. So I've given examples from a Canadian lady, Yasmin Muhammad. She actually talked about how liberals, because they wanted to be culturally sensitive, they are sort of blind to truth, blind to reality, right? Satya, they are not catering to reality at all. Similarly, if you look at Ahimsa, again, liberal culture of victimhood. In a liberal culture, to become great, you have to be victim. You cannot be a normal person and still become okay. I mean, we all have our share of victimhood, right? My soul is falling off before this talk. Am I a victim? You know, I'm just joking. But there are all levels of victimhood in everyone's life. But life cannot revolve around a victimhood driven sort of virtue. It has to be revolve around sort of something else. So that sort of a thing is missing because you believe sacredness of it. And because you want to be victim, you have to necessarily blame someone else. That creates a culture of himsa. Our culture of ahimsa is sort of go inner and try to make yourself a better person and all. That actually violates it. So I think I'll stop here. So, but the point is, there's enough evidence against the idea of majoritarianism. But this is very important. I have sent this thing to so many of my liberals and leftist friends, of course. Most of my colleagues, at least my vocal colleagues, and many of my friends, they are leftists and liberals. I sent them. I send them, if you make a criticism of this book, I'll post it in my own social media. Nobody has come up with anything. So I'm not saying that people are deliberately doing it. They might be lazy as well. But then probably you should be little cautious about your theories.
Thank you very much, Professor Gangopadhyay. You are a teacher of economics. You have taken up a subject in sociology and political science, and touched various aspects related to human psychology also. Very insightful presentation, as a wise man had said. An expert is one who tells you more than you want to know. So today it was the same situation. You have gone so deep into the subject and giving various theories and presenting in a very argumentative, very solid way how the present liberal theory, the linear theory and others, leading up to the liberalism, so-called liberalism in the Western world, uh, being imposed on not only the collective human societies or nations, or even the individuals, uh, but they are making life very difficult for the impressionable minds, which are, like, I would say, the adolescents and the children, imposing their ideas. And there have been studies in the West also that even the very young primary school students uh, were asked questions about their gender identities and their preferences, and whether they would like to change the gender and all that. And even in the primary schools, they were sensitized by inviting the drag queens who would talk to the toddlers and share their experiences of dressing like other gender or talking and behaving and how they are, you can say, getting acclimatized in the society. So what I want to ask, you can say, raise the point is, there is a kind of an imposition even on those who do not understand about this, the problem, the issue. And he has very rightly pointed out that this imposition on the younger, impressionable generation by the so-called liberals in the USA created an uprising, and that supported Trump and made him president. Because the people were so aghast by the kind of imposition, kind of, you can say, forceful thrusting upon their beliefs on the larger society, which was not accepting those values. So now coming to the idea of, you can say, why these liberals and others, they have been talking against the majority, and particularly he has mentioned about the very peaceful religions of Buddhism and Hinduism. They are being bracketed as a very, very aggressive belief systems, very aggressive, very intolerant societies in the Western media, and our own English media, which borrows ideas from whatever is West is writing or West is thinking about. And those ideas have been again, you can say, circulated, propagated all over the world, as if the minorities, the Muslims and the Christians, they have been suffering at the hands of the Hindu majority. Whereas the history of past 1,000 years is clearly, you can say, proving, is clearly an evidence that Hindus have been at the receiving end, even at the hands of, you can say, as I mentioned earlier also, few hundred or few thousand of Muslims they attacked, and they killed, they butchered, you can say, millions of Hindus, and the population of Hindus came down significantly in the 200 years, between 1200 and 1400 years. And even after that, large number of Hindus, whom we can call today as Muslims or Christians of the Indian subcontinent, whether they are in today's Bangladesh, or they are in today's Afghanistan, or they are in today's Pakistan, or they are in the what we call as the northeast part of India, or in some other states where the Christian population has increased. So the Muslim population increased due to Muslim intolerance and aggression, and the Christian population increased due to missionary activities and the intolerance of the Christian belief, that they were not ready to accept the Hindu belief system. Hindu belief systems and Hindu traditions, Hindu practices were considered as inferior to their own practices. And time and again, and even today, we can see such kind of, you can say, propaganda going on about denigrating the belief systems of Hindu society, which is a majority society. So all this talk about, you can say, majoritarianism, majority society imposing their ideas, is certainly not true in India. Now I invite all of you, if you want to make a point, if you want to ask a question to Professor Gangopadhyay on this issue, if you have to add something, you are most welcome. Please, you can start the mic and share your ideas. Yes, sir.
मेरा नाम विक्रम उपाध्याय है। जो अभी तक हम लोगों ने सुना, इसके पहले का जो अनुभव हुआ था एज जर्नलिस्ट के नाते या पढ़ने के नाते, 2-3 चीजें मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ पहले उसमें अपनी बात जोड़ के। कुछ काम मिला था मुझे पहले की, जो आज़ादी के बाद जितने प्रधानमंत्री हुए, वे लाल किले पे क्या भाषण देते, उनके भाषण देने का मुख्य बातें क्या थी। और इस दौरान जितने हम जवाहरलाल नेहरू के सारे भाषण सुनने पड़े, मुझे लगा उसमें की सारी चीजें जो है ना, उनके सामने दो ही समस्या थी, गरीबी और दूसरा था आपका जो जिसको सांप्रदायिक कहते हैं, वही उन्होंने 12-13 साल, जितने 20 साल उन्होंने जो भाषण दिए, इन्हीं दोनों चीजों को रखा। मैंने देखा उसके बाद भी जो शर्तें आई लगातार हिंदू सोसाइटी को लेके या हिंदू जो मानने वाले हैं उनको लेके उनके लिए दिमाग में 2 बातें डाल दी गई कि गांधी की हमने हत्या की, ये जहाँ भी जाते हैं लोगों को मारते हैं। ये इवन जब वाजपेयी प्राइम मिनिस्टर थे तब भी एक बहुत बड़ा कैंपेन चला था कि जब हिंदू या वाजपेयी जैसे लिबरल प्रधानमंत्री बनते हैं तब भी क्रिश्चियन जो है चर्चों पे अटैक हुआ, हम लोग में बहुत सारी चीजें हुई। मैं इसमें ये देखता हूँ कि शायद सरकारें हमारी थी नहीं या बहुत छोटे छोटे टर्म पे थी, तो हिंदुत्व के नाते जो एक अच्छी चीजें आनी चाहिए तो नहीं आई क्या। और दूसरा इसमें मेरा सवाल आपसे ये है कि अब जो सरकार चल रही है, यानी जो मोदी की गवर्नमेंट चल रही है, क्या सेम ही परसेप्शन है क्या हिंदुत्व के बारे में, या दुनिया का परसेप्शन बदला है, खास करके बड़े बड़े में आयोजन किए, कुंभ के किए या बाकी चीज किए, इसमें आपकी राय है?
विक्रम जी, प्रश्न सुनकर खुशी हुई। अच्छा विचार है। नहीं, पहली जो विचार है, आप जो बोल रहे हैं कि परसेप्शन का बात ना, दुनिया के दो चीज है। एक है कि ये विक्टिमहुड जो कैंपेन, ये ओरिजिनली एक क्रिश्चियन आइडिया है। जो आपका क्रिश्चियनिटी का पहले जितना भी था, पावर का था, महत्व था, राइट। तो जो भी देवता होते थे वो सब पावरफुल होते थे। अपोलो ग्रीक गॉड and all these Jupiter, Zeus, and Jupiter's Roman, Zeus, all these are like powerful people. क्रिश्चियनिटी ने एक को जो मर गया, जो खुद को डिफेंड नहीं कर पाया, उनको उन लोग जो सबसे बड़ा सन इन गॉड बना दिया। लेकिन तो जब जब पावर लोग का आता है, वो लोग पावर का सैक्रोसैंक्ट पर आ जाते हैं। तो ऐसे जो क्रिश्चियनिटी का जो विक्टिमहुड था, वो 1500 1600 तक खड़ा रहा। फिर यूरोपियंस के बाद पावर आने लगा, तो वो लोग पावर के चलते में चले गए, तो नेशनलिज्म में आ गए। इसमें किताब भी है, नेशनलिज्म ऑल्सो की रिटर्न ऑफ द गॉड्स, एंशिएंट गॉड्स, जो स्ट्रॉन्ग आर्म टैक्टिक्स इस सॉर्ट ऑफ। तो अभी भी जो मतलब पावर सेंटर है, स्ट्रॉन्ग आर्म पर विश्वास करते हैं। आपका पास अगर 10 ट्रिलियन जीडीपी होगा, आपके पास एक आईसीबीएम होगा, और आपके पास अपना खुद क्या हुआ एजुकेशन सिस्टम, जो कैन डू, व्हिच कैन डू इनोवेशन एंड व्हिच कैन आल्सो डोंट नीड टू हैव अप्रूवल ऑफ द अदर्स, ये आप आ जाएगा, तो अब दुनिया सतत ही आपको मान लेगा। चाइना को कोई नहीं मानता था, लेकिन ये तीन उनके पास है, इसलिए सब उनको मानते हैं। सो अगर ये सब नहीं आएगा तो कुछ नहीं आएगा। सो मोदी जी के मैं बहुत अच्छे ये मानता हूँ कि वो लोग जो हमें जो दिशा दिखाई है, ये हमें अभी इकोनॉमी का पावर दिखाना है, ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। ये नहीं होगा तो कुछ नहीं होगा एट द एंड ऑफ द डे। I mean, I can say 100 things against someone who is ruling for 11 years. There is no credit in that. But this is a most important contribution that he has done. लेकिन मेरा एक मानना है, क्योंकि मेरा डोमेन एक्सपर्ट है एजुकेशन सिस्टम में। ये सिस्टम, अगर ये सिस्टम हमारा चलता रहेगा तो जीडीपी लेकर भी आपका कुछ नहीं होगा, क्योंकि दे आर पॉइजनिंग द माइंड्स ऑफ द मोस्ट ब्राइटेड माइंड्स हु आर गोइंग टू कॉलेज। एंड हमारे पास उसका कोई चारा नहीं है। हम लोग क्या करते हैं, मुझे सार्वजनिक तौर पर जितना बोल सकता हूँ मैं उतना ही बोल रहा हूँ। हम लोग क्या करते हैं, कुछ लोग हमारे पास आ जाते हैं, बोलते हैं हाँ मैं आपका बात सही है, ठीक है। हम बोलते ठीक है, आप एक अधिकर्ता बन जाइए। लेकिन वो अधिकर्ता बनने से कुछ नहीं होता, क्योंकि जो सेम लिबरल थ्योरी से चलता रहता है, तो आपका अधिकर्ता आपका होगा कि दूसरे का होगा, क्या है। ये थ्योरी ही भी आपका परसेप्शन क्रिएट होगा, नैरेटिव क्रिएट होगा। तो ये ऐसे होगा कि अमेरिका जब ऐसे हुआ है, अमेरिका भी एक दिन में नहीं हुआ है। अमेरिका वॉज ए डिफॉल्ट रिपब्लिकन कंट्री, बट द कॉलेज एनरोलमेंट वॉज गोइंग अप, and all those who are going to college, they are getting evangelized by the liberals, and it has become a default democracy. So if we are thinking of enrollment ratio बढ़ाना है, बहुत खूब, लेकिन enrollment ratio किसके लिए बनाना है, that is the point. तो जब हमारा नॉन कोऑपरेशन मूवमेंट हुआ था ब्रिटिश के खिलाफ, गांधी जी थे हमारा, तब एक बात हुआ था, do you want to take poison if milk is not available? Let's say this milk is the real education, and what we are offering is almost poison. So unless we can change it, I don't think the narrative will go. Because Chinese, if you look at the powerful races, Chinese, Japanese, Israel is a really powerful nation compared to their size and all, right? They have their own education system to a large extent. They don't have their borrow from others.
बहुत अच्छा लगा सर। इनफैक्ट जो आप बता रहे हैं, इस पे ही मेरा एक फॉलोअप क्वेश्चन है कि सर क्या स्पिरिचुअलिटी से कुछ जो यूथ को हम कलेक्ट कर पाएंगे और उनको बता पाएंगे क्या चैलेंजेस हैं, और उसका रोल आप कैसे देखते हैं सर, अगर स्पिरिचुअलिटी से इनको कनेक्ट करा जाए, क्योंकि ये तो डेफिनेटली हो रहा है सर, जो आपने बताया जो चैलेंज आ रहा है, उसको किस तरीके से एड्रेस किया जा सकता है स्पिरिचुअलिटी से। क्योंकि अभी भी हमने देखा कुंभ में भी, अगर हम एग्जाम्पल लें तो बहुत यूथ गया है वहां पे, और ये पहले नहीं था सर कभी भी। तो उसके हिसाब से सर आप अगर कुछ टच पॉइंट करें कि अगर स्पिरिचुअलिटी को लेके या कुछ और सॉल्यूशंस ऐसा है जो जिससे हम यूथ को बहुत अर्ली हम मूव ऑन कर सकें इसमें।
सॉल्यूशन तो और एक सेशन ही आपको लगेगा, बट हमें शॉर्ट में आपको बता रहा हूँ। स्पिरिचुअलिटी में ये सुविधा होती है कि जो विक्टिमहुड का ऊपर लोगों का नजर कम हो जाता है, आत्मसदन के ऊपर आ जाता है, वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। क्योंकि हमारा जो विचार जब और तीक्ष्ण हो जाता है, तब आपको खुद को प्यूरिफाई करते हैं। इसीलिए स्पिरिचुअलिटी बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आपने खुद पर जाओ, मेडिटेट करो, दीज आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स। लेकिन एक डाउन साइड ये है, स्पिरिचुअलिटी में हम लोग सोचते हैं कि बाहर का काम जरूरी नहीं है, अंदर में देखो, उसमें ही सारा समस्या का हल हो जाएगा। आपको बाहर तो अंदर को ठीक करो, लेकिन एप्लीकेशन तो बाहर ही करना है ना। तो मुझे ये लगता है कि हमारा जो गीता का जो कर्मयोग है, ये बहुत कम हम लोग किए हैं, काम इस पर बहुत कम किए हैं। सो ये कर्मयोग का जो आइडिया, मतलब ये क्या होता है, हमारा कुछ चिल्ड्रन, मैं बोल रहा हूँ क्या हो रहा है, जो गेटेड कम्युनिटीज में आ रहा है, हम जो पेरेंट्स है, बहुत प्रोटेक्टिव पेरेंट्स है, हम लोग उसको घर के भी छोटे मोटे काम भी नहीं करने देते हैं। सो वो बहुत एक शैलो एग्जिस्टेंस आ जाता है। फिर जब जाता है किसी का कोई इनजस्टिस वगैरह देखते हैं, तो ये लगता है यही जगत का एकमात्र प्रॉब्लम है, चलो ये सब मान लेते हैं, चलो हम लोग आंदोलनजीवी बन जाते हैं। तो ऐसा वो ऐसे आ जाता है। और अभी जो हो रहा है कि जो जो बड़े बड़े घराना के लोग प्राइवेट यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ रहे हैं, अशोका, जिंदल, अहमदाबाद, ये इवन डॉगमा का मतलब फैक्ट्री है, तो उधर ये सब डॉगमा आ जाता है। इसके एक इसके एक प्रतिकार ये हो सकता है, हम एक मूवमेंट क्रिएट कर सकते हैं कि जब बच्चे छोटे रहेंगे, ये 10 साल, 8 साल, 10 साल, खुद के लिए नहीं, थोड़ा बहुत कम्युनिटी के लिए उसको करना सिखाओ। मतलब 1 घंटा थोड़ा क्लीनिंग कराओ रास्ते में, बहुत बड़ा कम नहीं है, लेकिन मिडिल क्लास में लोग करेंगे तो उसका घर का थोड़ा बाहर आने का अभ्यास आ जाएगा ना। मैं एक्चुअली मेरा बात आप देखेंगे, मेरा तो मतलब खानदान ऐसे लेफ्टिस्ट है। अ, मैं ब्लाइंड्स के लिए काम करता था। मुझे ऐसे नैरेटिव ऐसा था कि ब्लाइंड सब अच्छे लोग होते हैं, क्योंकि वो लोग ब्लाइंड है। फिर वो लोग के सब जब मेरा बहुत बहुत पैशनेटली काम करता था, उससे बहुत बातचीत होता था, तो मुझे ये देखा कि ब्लाइंड्स में भी सब एक जैसे नहीं है। देयर आर सम ब्लाइंड्स वर हेटेड बाय अदर ब्लाइंड्स, राइट? क्योंकि ऐसे ह्यूमन नेचर है, हमारा अंदर ही प्रॉब्लम है। इनसाइड अस देयर इज देवता, देयर इज असुर, दिस इज व्हाट द गीता सेज, राइट? नाउ ये अनुभव के लिए, ये अनुभव मेरा क्या क्यों हुआ? क्योंकि मैं काम किया, अपने जो जो कंफर्ट जोन है उसके बाहर जाके काम किया, नहीं तो ये अनुभव कभी नहीं आता। तो ये अगर एक मूवमेंट हम लोग चला पाएंगे बच्चे के लिए, हमारा स्कूल भी जैसा हो रहा है कि ऐसे बहुत बहुत सारी किताबें पढ़ता है, ये लैटिन अमेरिका का इधर का कैपिटल हुआ है, हु केयर्स इन व्हाट कंट्री इट इज अनलेस यू आर गोइंग देयर। सो लेकिन पॉइंट इज, तो उसमें क्या हो जाता है, लोगों का ये तो प्रैक्टिकल कुछ आ नहीं रहा है। तो एक तो है कि आपको थोड़ा समाज सेवा का जो निष्काम कर्म हो, इसका अनुशीलन हर घर में होना चाहिए। तो अब इसका जजमेंट इतना अनबैलेंस नहीं होगा, मिडिल क्लास और गेटेड कम्युनिटीज लोग थोड़ा बैलेंस्ड होगा। नंबर 2 है, हम लोग ये जो थियोरिटिकल जो स्पिरिचुअलिटी है, ऐसे सब स्पिरिचुअल जो जगह पे है, बाबा का जगह सब जगह पे है, वो स्पिरिचुअल हो जाता है, फिर बोलते हैं हाँ ठीक है आप घर चले जाओ। तो मतलब यू टेक द हनी एंड देन हैव इट इन योर ओन प्राइवेट थिंग, राइट? दैट्स नॉट अ गुड थिंग, you have to give it to the other people, right? So that practice should be taught in the temples, in all the ashramas, that you do this, but this is not end itself. If you are a Satpurush, युधिष्ठिर ने बोला, अब सत्पुरुष कौन है? सत्पुरुष वही है जो दूसरे के लिए आगे बढ़ते हैं। तो ये हमको सिखाना चाहिए। आपका परिचय जी?
वहाँ को नाम सर, मैं जानना चाहता हूँ कि इंडिया में हम ये देखते हैं कि जब भी रिलीजन के बेसिस पे कह लीजिए कि हिंदू अपने आप को असर्ट करते हैं थोड़ा सा, तो उसकी बड़ा क्रिटिक होता था वेस्ट में कि ये लोग क्या कर रहे हैं। लेकिन अब हम जो रिसेंट में यूरोप देख रहे हैं, उसमें ये हो रहा है कि चाहे एएफडी हो, अभी राइट हुआ जर्मनी में, आप इटली चले जाइए, वहाँ जॉर्जिया मेलोनी, अमेरिका चले जाइए, तो भले ही क्रिश्चियनिटी के बेसिस पर बहुत अफेक्शन ना हो, लेकिन रेस के बेसिस पर वहाँ भी बहुत अफेक्शन स्टार्ट हो गया। तो हम इसे मेजोरिटेरिज्म नहीं कहेंगे, क्या कहेंगे?
सो हमारा जो थिंकिंग है, इसमें मेजोरिटेरियनिज्म का कोई स्थान नहीं है, इसमें स्थान है हिंसा का। तो हमारा जो गीता है, इसमें बोला कि आपका गीता का 16 चैप्टर, सरस अध्याय आप पढ़िए, उधर 26 दैवी संपद का उल्लेख है और 5 आसुरिक संपद। कौन अच्छा है कि बुरा है, आपको देखना पड़ेगा किसका संपद बाहुल्य है इसमें। जो आसुरिक संपद ये बोला है, दंभ, दर्प, अभिमान, क्रोध, पारुष्य, पारुष्य मीन्स रूथलेसनेस। अगर आप जॉर्ज मेलोनी को आप देखेंगे, उसमें क्रिश्चियन वर्चूज बहुत कुछ दिखाई नहीं देता है। मतलब शी इज डूइंग लिव टुगेदर, शी हैज ए सन विदाउट मैरिज, ये सब तो क्रिश्चियनिटी कोई हाँ नहीं बोलेंगे ना कोई। सो सो फ्रॉम दैट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू उस लोग यही बोल रहे हैं कि फैमिली को बचाओ। मीडिया उसको नापसी बोल सकते हैं, फैसिस्ट बोल सकते हैं, लेकिन हमको मतलब यू नो द व्हाट हाउ द मीडिया इज ड्रॉन, राइट? तो उसी घर को आपको पता है कि ये लोग बेसिकली ये लोग सेंसिबल बात कर रहे हैं कि आपका जो जैसे नथिंग। सो लिबरलिज्म का थ्योरी का ये प्रॉब्लम ही है, मैं इकोनॉमिक्स में यही थ्योरी पढ़ाता हूँ एक वर्सन, कि इसमें हिस्ट्री कुछ नहीं है। इफ यू लुक एट एनी पर्सन, we are not without history. Even whatever I'm saying, this is coming from my DNA. That is come from my father, father's father, father's father, father's father, like that way, right? So nothing is coming automatically. So you cannot really erase history and start things. So that is why the European right wingers are saying. And second thing is of course, so अगर उसको आपको देखना पड़ेगा कि वो लोग अच्छा है कि बुरा है, नाथी लोग अच्छा है कि बुरा है। अब ये हमारे दिस इज व्हाट रिक्वायर्ड सॉर्ट ऑफ इंडिक सोशल साइंस। इसके ऊपर तो मैं 10 और भी बोल सकता हूँ, लेकिन आपको फिर 10 सेकंड ही बोलूंगा कि हमारा जो ये दैवी संपत्ति आसुरिक संपत्ति के आधार पर समाज और व्यक्ति को देखने का एक नजरिया होना चाहिए। वेस्टर्न ये कॉपी पेस्ट सोशल थ्योरीज को कॉपी पेस्ट नहीं करना चाहिए। मतलब कॉपी पेस्ट यही से बोल रहा हूँ कि 90% ऑफ दोस थ्योरीज आर ड्रिवन बाय पॉलिटिक्स। आई एम नॉट सेइंग एंटायरली इट्स रॉन्ग, देयर आर सम ट्रूथ्स इन एवरीथिंग, इवन दिस थ्योरीज माइट हैव सम ट्रूथ, but that is 10%. 90% it is glorified for political purpose.
तो क्या आने वाले समय में हम जो एंटी इंडिया जो हम अक्सर कोट करते हैं कि 50-60 सालों में हमें शिक्षा के माध्यम से ऐसी चीजें पढ़ाई गई कि हमारी सब चीजें प्राचीन हुई, तो क्या उसमें कुछ परिवर्तन स्थायी तौर पर उसमें कुछ ऐसा जो आने वाले दशकों में सदियों में उसका इम्पैक्ट रहेगा, या उस तरफ उसमें ठहराव है, ये तात्कालिक है, मतलब टेम्पररी है, या कुछ इसका?
हाँ, सो मेरा ये मानना है कि आप जो चेंज के बोल रहे हो ये सब वो डिसेंट्रलाइज होना चाहिए। अभी आप शिक्षा का बारे में बोल रहे हो, हम लोग हमारा एक एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर थे जो इसने गर्व किया था कि 5 साल में मैं एक कॉमा फुल स्टॉप भी चेंज नहीं किया। हम उसको क्रिटिसाइज नहीं कर रहे हैं, दिस इज हाउ द राइट विंग ऑपरेट्स ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड। वो लोग थोड़ा बैलेंस सबको लेकर जाना चाहते हैं, इसलिए थोड़ा परिवर्तन को उसका अच्छा नजरिए में नहीं देखते। लेकिन जो लिबरल्स है वो बहुत एग्रेसिव है। हमारा 2004 में जब चेंज हुआ था, जब सरकार गिरी थी, उसके बाद एक ही साल के अंदर पूरा टेक्स्ट बुक पूरा चेंज हो गया, और इतना भयंकर चेंज हो गया जैसे भयंकर चेंज हम देखा नहीं। मतलब आई कैन इमेजिन, क्योंकि इसका एक वर्जन मैं वेस्ट बंगाल बोर्ड में पढ़ा हूँ, तो इसका एक वर्जन मैंने पढ़ा हूँ छोटे से। हाँ, इसीलिए मैं इस टेक्स्ट बुक को ऐसे करीब से जानता हूँ। लेकिन ये बहुत शार्पली चेंज हुआ है। तो ऐसे जब अगर एक बार सरकार गिर जाएंगे, और सरकार गिरना बहुत मुश्किल कुछ नहीं है ये डेमोक्रेसी में मेरा, तो अब आपको कितना लास्ट करेगा ये आपको सोचना पड़ेगा, राइट? तो फ्रॉम दैट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू कुंभ एंड अदर थिंग्स, आई मीन, और मेरा एक क्रिटिसिज्म भी है छोटे मोटे, वो है पहले जब लोग तीर्थ में जाते थे तो ये क्या तपस्या होता था कि आपको बहुत कष्ट करना पड़ेगा, आपको ये जाके फिर मिलना पड़ेगा। तो इसमें आपका क्या बहुत मतलब इट्स ए क्लास ऑफ पीपल हु आर गोइंग टू द प्लेसेस, नॉट एवरीबॉडी कैन गो। अभी क्या हो गया, ये टूरिस्ट हो गया, टूरिज्म हो गया बेसिकली। सो जो क्लास ऑफ पीपल जा रहा है उसका जो मोटिवेशन, और ये टूरिस्ट का मोटिवेशन तो एक नहीं होगा ना। सो we really cannot bank too much. I mean, we are a think tanker, right? We have to take things little bit slowly. These are good for media consumption and all, right? लोग जा रहे हैं लग रहे हैं, लेकिन सरकार गिर जाएगा तो इससे दूसरा होना भी कुछ मुश्किल नहीं है। That's what I'm trying to say. लेकिन जैसे उसका एक प्रोजेक्ट है ऑपरेशन थेजोलिंग का, तो पहले से जोशुआ प्रोजेक्ट एक था मिशनरीज का। जोशुआ प्रोजेक्ट का मतलब था सब लोगों को क्रिश्चियन करना है, उसमें एंटायर इंडिया का हर कम्युनिटी का लिस्ट है, बहुत कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव लिस्ट है, तो देखने में चौंक जाएंगे। और कितना कम्युनिटीज में क्रिश्चियन, कितना परसेंटेज, सब कुछ लिखा हुआ है। थोड़ा कम लिखा हुआ है परसेंटेज, ठीक है लिखा हुआ है। लेकिन फिर उसने बोला अब न्याय भाई, तो इस प्रोजेक्ट को उतना वो लोग पब्लिसाइज नहीं करते थेजलानी का। ये क्या हुआ, रोमन्स जब हुआ था उधर तो पेगन थे, उसके वजह पेगनिज्म का हटना पड़ा। तो वो क्या किया, जो मूर्ति जो था, मतलब रोमन्स का हमारा जैसे नगर देवता होते हैं, रोमन्स का सिटी गॉड्स होते थे, तो सिटी गॉड्स का जो मूर्ति उधर रहता है। अभी यूरोप में आप जाओ तो देखोगे कि हर जो मूर्ति है उसका ये जो नोज है ब्रोकन है, क्यों broken है? क्योंकि that was the way. तो लाइक हम लोग जो टूटा हुआ मूर्ति हम लोग पूजा नहीं करते, वो लोग ऐसे मूर्ति को एक स्ट्रोक में नोज को वीकेस्ट स्पॉट था उसको ब्रेक कर देते, तो उसका जो पेगन्स रोमन होते हैं उसको पूजा करना छोड़ देते थे। तो अब वो लोग आ जाते थे, बोलते आप तो ये पूजा नहीं कर रहे हो, चलो हमारा ये में आ जाओ। सो ये दिस इज कॉल्ड क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग। अब जो कुंभ बोल रहा है, अगर कुंभ के जगह पर सब जो नाई जो है जो सब जो लोग जो नौका का बोट पे अनदर पीपल राइट, वो लोग को क्रिश्चियन कर देंगे जैसे कन्याकुमारी में था राइट, तो क्या हो, things will go very different direction in a very critical. So you have to think in that sort of critical thinking. So I don't go too much about the euphoria. I mean,
Ayushi ji, you want to ask a question?
Thank you so much, Professor Kaushik, for a very thought-provoking lecture. Just a couple of things. One, I somehow have a little, this entire majority-minority debate is slightly problematic because it keeps changing with time. Today, what is a minority probably will become a majority tomorrow, or vice versa. Might be what is a minority today can end up being a majority tomorrow. So in this case, all these theories, including the today you mentioned about the linear theory of social evolution. How much does it hold true? Because this linear theory seems okay for Abrahamic religions, but when it comes to Hinduism, which is more of a circular religion based on the karma theory, how far is this theory applicable to a lot of East Asian religions or way of life? Is this applicable? Second, you were talking of victimhood. Here there is another very interesting theory over there of the Stockholm theory. Okay, the Stockholm syndrome, as they say. Now in the Stockholm syndrome, the victim starts liking the perpetrator. So do you think this holds true for a lot of converts? Like in India, you have a lot of people who have been converted to Islam at some point of time or the other. There probably is no original or indigenous Muslim over here. So in this case, how do you think these kind of theories actually do more damage to the entire discourse of majority minority? Would like your views on this. Thank you.
thank you, Ayushi. It was very nice to hear that you have listened it very carefully. Of course, you are right. Any pre-Christian thing does not have a linear theory. Hinduism, Buddhism, or any pagan religion, because religion was not about the collective. It was more about the introspection and inner aspects, the thing that they call religion. Now, of course, that's true. But secondly, you talked about the evolution of these theories, majority, minority changing. And here is the fun. The moment you create an unscientific theory, nobody cares about the data. If you don't care about the data, what do they care about? They care about the politics. If you look at the CAA, Citizenship Amendment Bill, you might call it a majoritarianism because Muslims are excluded from the bill. But from the another lens, and this lens is not given by me, this lens is given by CPIM, Communist Party of India, Marxwadi, India 2012 National Politburo meeting. There they have a party sort of document they discuss, and there they are saying we need CAA because the minority in Bangladesh are in danger. So you see, depending on the politics, I just trying to remind you, the first state that assembly that rejected CAA is Kerala, by CPIM. In their own charter, they have said that in 2012 that they require special status for Bangladeshi Hindus, right? So politics can make them change their stand overnight. That's what it is. So then that is what the problem with the unscientific theories, any unscientific theories. I think minority majority thing. That's why we cannot really the Muslim thing you are talking about, the Stockholm syndrome thing. Stockholm syndrome thing is true. I mean, I'm not denying it, but that is what the power is. Whenever there is power, people will go to that side, right? So you see in the Twitter, so many people who are sort of calling themselves woke and liberals, suddenly after Donald Trump won, they are starting saying, well, I'm not a woke, there are some problems with this. Suddenly those people who are looking after the DEI in federal administration, they are becoming senior administrators only, without any mention of DEI. So power speaks definitely. There's no doubt about it. But if you look at the Muslim, there is a problem here. the Muslims in the 19th century, they were much more like Hindus. You can understand that because the Muslim rule has collapsed. It's the British rule, and Muslims were not basically they lost their traditional privileges. So if you look at Bengal, Bengal was a very sort of one of the hubs of Muslim League movements. The biggest, the pre-partition, the biggest massacre started in Bengal. It's called the Great Kolkata Killings, just 1 year before the 15th August 1947. Now, in Bengal, what was the case? I know a little bit strong. So there are many British administrators. They have observed and they have written things. One of them is James Wise. He has a treatise written in 1883. And there is a traditional sect of Muslims who are more like Hindus. They won't kill any cow. They won't slaughter any cow because cow was sacred to them. They would worship the feet, the imprint of the feet of the prophet. हमारा हिंदूज में एक ये है विष्णु चरण कमल. So Vishnu Pada Padma. So like we worship Vishnu Pada Padma, they would worship the Rasul Kadam. And there are many mosques in Bangladesh. One is still there in Chittagong, Chattogram. And another is I have seen in my own childhood in Malda, Goa. This is called Kadam Rasul Mosque. So nowadays the biggest mosque is to be called Juma Masjid, right? This is the Arabic word Juma, Jamat, right? Same. But that time the biggest used to be called Kadam Rasul Mosque. And Muslims would not slaughter a cow. They will go to the different folk deities and all. They will worship the folk deities the Hindus do. Only very small minority of Muslims called the Ashrafic classes, they did not like it. Because they used to consider themselves from the Middle East. And this is not I'm saying, they are themselves are saying. I have enough evidence for that. And these people, they started a counter movement. It's called Farazi movement. It started with a person called Mir Nishar Ali, Titu Mir, then Haji Saritullah. And these people talked about the literal Islam, going back to the literal Islam. So when you talk about Hindu-Muslim harmony, it was already there in 19th century. Because these people started literal Islam and that become over the time because it's a linear theory, it engulfed the entire Islamic society and then it has become the only voice of Islam. And with this literal Islam, it's very difficult to have anything. You have to have a sort of pluralistic idea. You have to have a sort of a folk Islam or experiential understanding of Islam. That is not happening.
Professor Gangopadhyay, I would like you to summarize today's presentation and about the theories which you have talked about. What are the essential features of this imposition of liberalism, which is creating a kind of unrest in the world, as you gave the example of Netherlands and USA, including India also. What are the essential, you can say, that those features that we can observe, and what are the counter from the society? How the society is countering those features which are being imposed or which are very powerful in their presentation or in their imposition?
I would think that liberalism, the biggest problem is what they create is dichotomy. Two different standards for two different peoples based on their theories. This is a very big problem in many sense. And secondly, they would call the entire human history full of atrocities, full of injustice, and they are sort of trying to create a new man where there will be no injustice, no atrocities, all equality. So this is a very shallow concept of justice. Justice cannot come out of any theory. Justice, the most important law is called Roman law. I mean, most European laws took sort of inspiration from them, including the British laws. So the idea of Roman law is for keeping peace. Whatever makes people happy in a way or balance, that is sort of called justice. Now, what is happening now? The liberal theories, they are saying whatever keeping people happy is not good enough. We have to transform society. That's the Gramscian idea, Antonio Gramsci's idea. The problem is Gramsci spent most of his time in jail. How he would really know that whether his ideas will create a sustainable society? Nobody can. Only a community can decide something is sustainable or not from their collective experience. No human being is smart enough to know that what I am saying will make it work. So these are the two things that liberals are doing. They are negating all the history, and in the new case, they are also using dichotomous standards. That is making everything. That's making the society a battleground. This is a culture war, right? That is happening all over the West. It's coming also in the Indian places, right? Um, Now, problem is the society could counter it. So in our thing we said, no, Satyameva Jayate. So at the end of the day, always the truth or reality will win. But the question is not whether it will win or not. Question is at what cost. Suppose we win with like a Kurukshetra kind of scenario, with only 7% standing there, right? That's not a good outcome. Good outcome is to prevent Kurukshetra before the all out this kind of things happen. Right? In Mahabharata, there are many times Krishna himself tried to stop Kurukshetra many times. They could not do it. And that's why this massive thing happened. So if you go with the liberals, so it is very dangerous for India. Because India is at the sort of end of a curve, down to one curve, and we are sort of uprising. We're getting whatever civilizational things. We're coming very good way. Now, if we have a civil war, that will be the most disastrous for us. And the liberal ideas are encouraging, increasing the constituency for a possible civil war. That is what the dangerous thing is. Yeah. So I would say that the traditional communities has to be empowered. That's the only prescription I will give to counter liberalism, because it is anti-community. We have to increase the community and values. Community celebration has to be more. So I don't want a big kumbh. I want a small kumbh in every year, in every place.
When you're talking about liberalism, I was just following up whatever you have
Hmm.
spoken. We, at present, the way liberalism is looked at, it is more political. And there is a huge political distance for people who can speak anything and everything, and just in the shadow of liberalism. But if on the broader side, if you when you're talking about theories, you look at the truth and you look at the reality, and then the way we looked at things 50 years back or 100 years back, and the way we look at things today, we see that we need to connect ourselves, and that connectivity was missing. Which I would say that at least in last 10, 12 years, we are more connected to people. And that connectivity is heading towards, the point that one of our friends was saying, that is giving you a sense of ownership. And that sense of ownership gives you originality. Then you don't require some great ideas from outside, and you generate your own ideas, or you bank on your own building, your own ancient culture. I mean, we have solutions of all kind of problems in our own scriptures, and which have not been part of our regular studies, and they have to be brought in if we want to sustain and we want to find solutions from within, rather than just following whatever other countries are doing or whatever is their thinking. I mean, you have very succinctly put it straightforward. So when you look at liberalism is just the way people are talking about liberals. They are using it as a political term in order to defend whatever they are doing. They say, no, this is how liberalism is. But actually, in the real sense of the term, they are not really liberals.
This is the problem. Huh? The problem is, I mean, this is a yes minister, very famous British comedy show, right? The one title is Open Government. So basically they created a document, Open Government, but everything inside is to close it from all the people, right? I mean, we have seen the Lokpal bill in Delhi also, the same sort of story, right? The point is, this is the big strategy of the Gramsci and the cultural Marxists. They knew that if they talk about destroying current society, nobody will agree to that. What they want to talk about? They want to talk about empower everyone, this and that, which is not possible. So, for example, if you look at these families, they call the gay families a family. No, if you really, I mean, it is not a family in any sense we knew today. If you, I'm nothing against. It's a personal preference of people. I have nothing against them. If they want to be happy, let them be happy. But you cannot really equate them to a traditional family and call their values family values. That's the problem, is right.
Thank you, Kaushik ji, for the wonderful discourse that you gave. I have read your book partially, not the complete thing, but I've heard you on different platforms and I was fascinated and I thought that it is high time we called the bluff. And an institution like ours is very important for calling such bluffs. And you've done the necessary. I do agree that to a certain extent, it is again a battle between democracy and communism under a different garb. They can call it cultural nationalism, they can call it liberal left liberalism, whatever it is. But of course, with the victory of the right group in the US, the theorists are a little buoyant about it. But I somehow feel that India has a major role to play. And in this role that is India is assigning to itself and taking up, the younger generation definitely has a lot to do in that. Um, what I'm most concerned about is how do we infuse the youth with the right kind of thinking. Of course, the Kumbh happening and the IKS happening, Indian knowledge system being penetrated into the education system, these are all positive signs. But over and above this, how do we speed up the process? Or should I say, how do we bolster the process more? This is for people like you who write books like this, but I think um, more than what you are writing, if you keep speaking from different platforms, the youth will also hear you and they will also understand that in the name of theories, what are we trying to propagate and what is it that is actually going to harm the youth and the country and human beings in general. So I cannot congratulate you enough for what you have done. And I expect more from people like you. And we are grateful that you came and delivered this discourse. We look forward to more interactions. And maybe if you can throw a little light on how this is taken on a new form, and this new form of it, well, even that snakes in the Ganga is also something which speaks of this. So this left liberal has tried to gain some coinage and some respectability, which it does not deserve. So it's high time we need to call the bluff. And how do we call the bluff?
Thank you, Silaji. I'm very grateful to you for giving me the floor and all. It is really fortunate. Um, about the other thing, yeah, actually right. I think authors like us are, it's like 1% inspiration. The perspiration that is very important. How to take these ideas to logical conclusions and other things. I'll be very happy to do my share of the yagya by talking to people. I actually told someone that if he could give me some forum talking in different IITs, IIMs, and central universities like JNU and all places. Now that is up to the other people to sort of take it up. I would be but very happy to talk about it. I don't expect any personal sort of compensation for that. That's pretty much it. But other thing is, of course, the other thing is what is very problematic in the modern times is what I see is there is a very big deficit of character. And that is why Gandhiji is very relevant, I see even today. So, I mean, there's a lot of public intellectuals. I mean, I don't like to call myself intellectual. I'm just happy to be a person who teacher. But a lot of public intellectuals, they have a very outside sort of superficial thing. But if you go inside, even them, the character is missing. So, and this is only, I'm not blaming them. This is sort of a replica of the entire society. That if you cannot have this karma yoga, that you have to do just for the sake of searching for Atman through consciousness. Otherwise, we are doomed. That's what I think.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gangopadhyay. Thank you very much, all of the participants who are present here physically, who joined online. And this was a wonderful talk, wonderful discussion. Very pertinent issues were raised. And again, we come to the conclusion that the people who call themselves as liberals are basically truly illiberal people. And they play on the what we call the human psychology victimhood, and you can say always creating an enemy for every individual. That see, you are a woman, you are a girl, you have wings to fly, but your parents are your enemies. They are blocking your growth. If you are a youth, then the elder previous generation is your enemy. If you are a worker, then the industrialist is your enemy. If you are an elderly person, then the younger generation is your enemy. If you're a man, then the woman is your enemy. Women, then the man is your. So it's always, you can say, creating conflicts in the society, and everybody is, you can say, fed with the victimhood, so that there is more and more conflict, and the whole theory of whether Marxism or so-called this illiberalism, this survives on this feeds on conflict, social conflicts, and they have taken it up to the extreme levels, which we are seeing in terms of various those pronouns and identities and whatnot. And definitely that their target is any collective. The target is not only the Hindu religion per se, such a larger gathering of, I would say, different belief systems, different, you can say, worship systems. It's an umbrella of different beliefs. But their target is the institution of family. They don't like the institution of family. So any collective, right from family to nation to a dharma or a belief system, is their enemy, and they have been, you can say, instigating individual that you have to fight against others. And where this instigation, this victimhood will take human society is a definitely a cause for worry for all of us, all sensible human beings. So we had some very good theoretical presentation about it from Professor Kaushik Gangopadhyay ji. Once again, thank you very much, sir, for giving us your valuable time. And I again thank all the participants.